but each person was different. So there were millions of little moments and episodes.
Camilla never expected this moment to come, but the hidden truth has finally burst open. A shocking royal instruction involving Princess Charlotte has been uncovered, and the palace can no longer hide behind closed doors. Do it quietly, the order was said to be given, but secrets don't sleep forever. Now the truth is breathing in the open, shaking royal calm and leaving everyone stunned. What really happened? Why was Charlotte part of it? And how did this stay hidden so long? The answer is louder than any denial, and what you're about to hear will leave you speechless. The sweet princess and the complex queen. Princess Charlotte Elizabeth Diana stands as one of the most beloved young royals in modern British history. At just 9 years old, she has already captured hearts around the world with her natural confidence, infectious smile, and remarkable composure during public appearances. Born on the 2nd of May 2015, Charlotte holds a unique position as the first female royal in over 500 years who cannot be displaced in the line of succession by a younger brother. This historic distinction places her third in line to the throne, behind her father Prince William and older brother Prince George. Those who know Charlotte describe her as exceptionally bright, wonderfully spirited, and possessing a strong sense of justice that reminds many of her late grandmother, Princess Diana. Unlike the sometimes shy demeanor of her older brother George, Charlotte has shown herself to be naturally confident and surprisingly assertive for someone so young. She waves to crowds with genuine enthusiasm, maintains eye contact with dignitaries, and has been known to gently correct her brothers when they step out of line during public events. Her teachers at Lambrook School speak of a girl who excels academically while remaining kind and inclusive with her classmates. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, has worked tirelessly to ensure that Charlotte grows up with as much normalcy as possible, despite her royal status. Friends of the family reveal that Catherine is particularly protective of her only daughter, knowing the unique pressures that come with being a princess in the modern age. The Princess of Wales has spoken privately about her desire for Charlotte to have choices in life, to pursue her own interests and passions, and to never feel trapped by the weight of royal duty before she is ready to shoulder it. Charlotte shares a special bond with her mother, often seen holding Catherine's hand during public outings and looking to her for reassurance during formal events. The young princess has inherited her mother's love of sports, particularly tennis and gymnastics, and shows a keen interest in art and photography. Those close to the Wales family describe a household where laughter is common, where the children are encouraged to express themselves, and where Charlotte is allowed to simply be a little girl despite the extraordinary circumstances of her birth. Queen Camilla, on the other hand, occupies a position that took decades to secure and remains complicated in the eyes of many. Now 77 years old, she has spent years working to transform her public image from the woman who was once blamed for the dissolution of Charles and Diana's marriage into a respected queen consort. Her journey from royal mistress to queen has been marked by careful public relations management, strategic charitable work, and a gradual acceptance by both the royal family and the British public. Those who work closely with Camilla describe her as pragmatic, shrewd, and deeply protective of the monarchy's traditions and her husband's reign. She has strong opinions about how the royal family should operate and has never been shy about expressing those views behind palace doors. Unlike the late Queen Elizabeth, who ruled with a gentle hand and rarely interfered in the lives of younger royals, Camilla has shown herself to be more hands-on in her approach to family matters. Some insiders suggest this stems from her awareness that her time as queen is limited, given her age and her husband's own health challenges. Camilla's relationship with her step-grandchildren has always been somewhat formal. While she attends family gatherings and important events, she has never developed the warm, close bond that the children shared with their great-grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, or that they currently enjoy with Catherine's parents, Michael and Carol Middleton. Palace staff have observed that Charlotte, in particular, maintains a polite but distant relationship with her step-grandmother, never quite relaxed in her presence the way she is with other family members. The dynamic between Catherine and Camilla has long been a source of quiet tension within palace walls. While both women maintain cordial relations in public, those who work closely with the family speak of fundamental differences in their approaches to royal life. Catherine represents a modern, accessible monarchy that connects with ordinary people. Camilla, shaped by her long struggle for acceptance, tends toward more traditional, formal approaches to royal duty. These differences have occasionally led to disagreements about everything from public appearances to parenting choices, though such conflicts have always been carefully managed away from public view. King Charles finds himself in the difficult position of trying to support both his wife and his son's family. At 76 years old, he waited longer than any heir in British history to ascend to the throne, and his reign has been marked by his determination to modernize the monarchy while respecting its traditions. He adores his grandchildren and has spoken publicly about his desire to spend more time with them, but his loyalty to Camilla and his respect for her opinions often puts him at odds with William and Catherine's wishes for their children. The stage was set for conflict in early 2024, as Charlotte approached her 9th birthday and began taking on more visible royal duties. Her natural charisma and growing confidence made her increasingly prominent in public life, and discussions began within palace circles about her future role. It was during these conversations that differences in vision between the Wales household and the King and Queen's household began to emerge more clearly. What nobody outside the innermost circle of the royal family knew was that Queen Camilla had been formulating specific ideas about Princess Charlotte's upbringing and future role. These ideas, shaped by Camilla's traditional views about royal protocol and her concerns about the monarchy's image, would soon crystallize into a directive that would shake the very foundations of family trust and threaten to create a rift that might never fully heal. The order that changed everything. The directive came in late November of 2024, delivered not through informal family conversation but through official palace channels. Queen Camilla had issued a formal order regarding Princess Charlotte's education, public role, and future training as a senior royal. The instruction was clear, detailed, and shocking in its presumption. Charlotte was to be removed from Lambrook School and enrolled in a traditional Swiss finishing school by the fall of 2025, where she would receive what Camilla termed proper preparation for her future role as a princess of the realm. The order went far beyond educational recommendations. It outlined a complete restructuring of Charlotte's upbringing, including mandatory deportment classes, strictly monitored public appearances with approved messaging, limited contact with the Middleton family, who Camilla viewed as too common an influence, and a rigorous schedule of royal protocol training that would consume most of Charlotte's free time. Most controversially, the directive specified that Charlotte should spend extended periods at royal residences under the direct supervision of staff appointed by the Queen, effectively removing her from her parents' day-to-day care for significant portions of the year. Palace insiders who first saw the document described it as breathtakingly presumptuous. One longtime staff member, speaking on condition of anonymity, revealed that the directive read more like a royal decree from centuries past than a suggestion from a step-grandmother. It invoked the authority of the Queen Consort's position and referenced historical precedents for senior royals overseeing the education of children in line for the throne. Most disturbingly, it suggested that William and Catherine's more relaxed, modern approach to parenting was inadequate for preparing a princess who would one day play a crucial role in supporting the monarchy. The order specifically criticized several aspects of Charlotte's current upbringing. It questioned the wisdom of allowing her to attend a co-educational school rather than a traditional girls' institution. It expressed concern about Charlotte's close relationship with her maternal grandparents, suggesting that too much time spent in their middle-class household might give her inappropriate expectations about life beyond royal duty. It even went so far as to specify approved activities and disapproved ones, with Charlotte's beloved gymnastics deemed unsuitable for a princess who wanted to maintain proper royal dignity at all times. When senior palace officials first received the directive, there was immediate alarm about how William and Catherine would react. Several advisors privately questioned whether Camilla had the authority to issue such an order, given that William and Catherine are Charlotte's parents, and William himself is second in line to the throne. The protocol was murky. Traditionally, the reigning monarch has had significant say in the upbringing of direct heirs, but Charlotte is not a direct heir, and times have changed dramatically since such interventions were commonplace. King Charles was informed of the directive before it was sent to William's household, and according to sources close to the situation, he did not object. Whether this represented his genuine agreement with his wife's views or simply his unwillingness to contradict her publicly remains a matter of debate among those who witnessed the events unfold. Some suggest Charles saw merit in more traditional royal training for his granddaughter. Others believe he was simply trying to avoid conflict with Camilla, having spent so many years fighting to secure her position beside him. The order reached William's private secretary on a gray afternoon in late November. The secretary, understanding immediately the explosive nature of the document, requested an urgent meeting with the Prince of Wales. William was in the middle of an engagement when he was pulled aside and shown the directive. Those present described his face going from confusion to disbelief to barely contained fury as he read through the pages. His first words, witnesses report, were simply asking whether this was some kind of joke. Catherine was informed that same evening at their residence in Windsor. She read through the directive twice, according to those familiar with the situation, her expression growing increasingly troubled. As a mother who had carefully crafted a childhood for her daughter that balanced royal duty with normal experiences, the order represented everything she feared about the institution overwhelming the individual. The suggestion that her parenting was inadequate and that her own family was an inappropriate influence struck at the heart of her deepest protective instincts. The historical context for such royal intervention exists, though it reaches back generations. Queen Mary, consort to King George V, famously had strong opinions about the upbringing of her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, insisting on rigid formality and extensive protocol training. Her influence was widely credited with making King George VI, who never expected to be king, capable of shouldering the crown when his brother abdicated. However, it was also blamed for exacerbating the emotional difficulties that plagued several royals of that generation. More recently, Prince Philip had significant input into the education of Prince Charles, insisting he attend Gordonstoun School in Scotland despite Charles's own preferences and his mother's initial reservations. That decision, while made with good intentions about building character, left Charles with difficult memories of his school years and contributed to his determination to allow his own sons more say in their educational paths. The idea that history might repeat itself with Charlotte, overriding her parents' wishes in favor of traditional royal formation, seemed to many like a step backward into a less enlightened era. Within 48 hours of the directive being delivered, it had become the worst-kept secret among senior palace staff. Household members whispered about the audacity of the order, about the likely explosion when William and Catherine formally responded, and about the fault lines it exposed within the royal family. Some older staff members, shaped by decades of traditional service, quietly supported Camilla's view that Charlotte wanted more rigorous royal training. Younger employees, more in tune with modern attitudes about childhood and parenting, were appalled at the presumption of trying to remove a child from her loving home environment. The question everyone asked in hushed conversations was what would happen next. William was known for his fierce protectiveness of his children and his determination that they have better childhoods than his own had been. Catherine had shown herself to be a devoted mother who made her children her top priority above all royal duties. Neither seemed likely to simply accept an order that would fundamentally alter their daughter's life and remove her from their care. Catherine's discovery and William's rage. Catherine learned the full extent of Camilla's directive not through official channels, but through a conversation with a trusted lady-in-waiting who felt the Princess of Wales deserved to know everything the document contained. While William had been shown the order by his private secretary, he had initially tried to shield Catherine from the most inflammatory details, hoping to resolve the matter quietly before it caused her distress. His protective instinct, however well-intentioned, meant that Catherine's discovery of the complete truth came as an even greater shock. The lady-in-waiting, who had served the royal family for over 20 years, arrived at Adelaide Cottage on a cold December evening. She brought with her a complete copy of Camilla's directive, including handwritten notes in the margins that revealed the Queen's personal thoughts about Charlotte's upbringing. These notes were particularly cutting, criticizing Catherine's choice to prioritize her children's emotional well-being over rigid royal protocol, and suggesting that the Middleton influence was creating a princess who was too ordinary, too comfortable with commoners, and insufficiently aware of her elevated status. Catherine read through every page in silence, her hands trembling slightly as she absorbed the implications. The document didn't simply suggest changes to Charlotte's education, it laid out a comprehensive plan to reshape her daughter's entire childhood and future. There were schedules blocking out months at a time when Charlotte would be away from her parents and siblings. There were lists of approved companions from aristocratic families and disapproved ones from more common backgrounds. There were even specifications about Charlotte's appearance, suggesting that her hair should be styled more formally, and her wardrobe should reflect traditional royal standards rather than the more casual, age-appropriate clothing Catherine typically chose for her. What wounded Catherine most deeply were the implications about her fitness as a mother. The directive suggested that her middle-class background left her ill-equipped to raise a princess of Charlotte's importance. It questioned whether someone who had grown up in Bucklebury, Berkshire, whose parents had built their fortune through a party supply business, could truly understand the requirements of raising a child destined for a senior royal role. These veiled criticisms cut to Catherine's deepest insecurities, the whispers she had endured for years about being a commoner who married above her station. When William returned home that evening and found Catherine with the complete directive spread across the table, he knew immediately that his attempt to protect her had failed. Catherine's eyes, usually so warm and welcoming, were hard with anger and hurt. She asked him quietly why he hadn't shown her everything from the beginning, why he had thought she wanted to be shielded from the truth about what Camilla thought of her and their family. William had no adequate answer except that he loved her and hadn't wanted to see her hurt. That night, after their children were asleep, William and Catherine had what staff members later described as the most serious conversation of their marriage. They talked for hours about what the directive meant, not just for Charlotte, but for their family's future within the institution of the monarchy. Catherine expressed feelings she had rarely voiced so directly, about how she had spent years trying to be the perfect princess, following every protocol, supporting every cause, and still being viewed by some within the palace as fundamentally not good enough because of where she came from. William, listening to his wife's pain, felt his own anger crystallizing into a cold, determined fury. This wasn't simply about a disagreement over education or royal training. This was about his stepmother attempting to override his authority as a father and undermine his wife's role as a mother. It was about treating his daughter like crown property rather than a beloved child who deserved to have her own wishes and feelings considered. Most fundamentally, it was about respect, and Camilla's directive showed a stunning lack of it for both him and Catherine. The following morning, William requested an emergency meeting with his father's most senior advisors. He arrived at Clarence House with a fury that those present described as quietly devastating. William had inherited his mother's ability to express profound disappointment and anger without raising his voice, a skill that made his displeasure even more impactful. He placed Camilla's directive on the table and asked the assembled officials to explain by what authority the Queen Consort believed she could dictate the upbringing of his daughter. The senior advisors struggled to provide adequate answers. They acknowledged that historically, senior royals had exercised significant influence over the education and training of children in line for the throne. However, they also admitted that Catherine and William, as Charlotte's parents, retained primary authority over such decisions. The protocol was unclear precisely because the situation was unprecedented in modern times. Queen Elizabeth had taken a hands-off approach to the upbringing of her great-grandchildren, offering guidance only when asked and respecting the parenting choices of younger generations. The confrontation became more heated when one of the older advisors suggested that the king supported his wife's position and that William should consider his father's wishes. William's response, according to those present, was sharp and uncompromising. He reminded them that he was second in line to the throne, that he would someday be king, and that any decision made about his children's upbringing would be made by him and Catherine, not by courtiers worried about offending the current queen. His father's feelings, while important, did not supersede his rights and responsibilities as Charlotte's father. William then demanded a face-to-face meeting with Camilla herself. The advisors urged caution, suggesting that such a confrontation could create an irreparable rift in the family. William responded that the rift already existed, created the moment Camilla issued her presumptuous directive. He wanted to hear from her own lips why she thought it appropriate to attempt to take his daughter away from her family, to criticize his wife's parenting, and to disregard his wishes for his own child's future. The meeting with Camilla was arranged for 2 days later at Clarence House. In the interim, William and Catherine made a decision that surprised many who knew them. They sat down with Charlotte in age-appropriate terms and asked her about her own wishes. Did she want to go to a different school? Did she want to spend long periods away from her family? Did she feel that her current life was making her unprepared for being a princess? Charlotte's responses, delivered with the straightforward honesty of a 9-year-old, were unambiguous. She loved her school, she loved her family, she wanted to stay exactly where she was. Armed with their daughter's own wishes, William and Catherine entered the meeting with Camilla as a united front. Catherine, despite her natural tendency toward diplomacy and conflict avoidance, had decided that this was a battle worth fighting. Her protective instincts as a mother overrode any concerns about palace politics or family harmony. She had watched her husband suffer from the emotional distance and rigid formality of his own upbringing, had seen how it affected his relationship with his father, and she was determined that Charlotte would not endure the same experience. The confrontation itself was witnessed only by the principals involved, but staff members waiting outside reported raised voices, something virtually unheard of in royal settings. William emerged 90 minutes later, his jaw set and his expression grim. Catherine followed, her arm linked through her husband's in a show of solidarity. Camilla remained inside, and those who saw her afterward described her as shaken but unbowed, still convinced of the rightness of her position even in the face of William's fury. In the days following the confrontation, it became clear that no resolution had been reached. William and Catherine had made their position clear, and Camilla had not withdrawn her directive. King Charles found himself caught between his wife and his son, trying to mediate a dispute that seemed to have no middle ground. The question hanging over everyone involved was what would happen next, and whether this conflict over Charlotte's future would become the breaking point that fractured the royal family beyond repair. The hidden agenda behind the directive. The directive regarding Princess Charlotte's upbringing did not emerge from a vacuum, and as details began to leak from palace insiders, a more complex picture of Camilla's motivations began to emerge. On the surface, the Queen's order appeared to be about ensuring proper royal training for a princess who would someday play a crucial role in supporting the monarchy. However, those close to the situation revealed that deeper currents of insecurity, competition, and strategic positioning were driving Camilla's unprecedented intervention into Charlotte's life. Charlotte's full name, Charlotte Elizabeth Diana, served as a constant reminder of this legacy. From birth, she had been linked to her late grandmother, and as she grew older, the comparisons became increasingly frequent. Charlotte possessed Diana's confidence, her ease with people, and her instinctive understanding of how to connect with crowds. Photographs of Charlotte waving to well-wishers or comforting her younger brother during public events frequently appeared alongside archival images of Diana performing similar gestures, the similarities striking enough to dominate media coverage. For Camilla, these comparisons represented more than simple nostalgia. They reinforced the narrative that had dogged her entire time as Charles's partner and then wife, the story that she was the woman who could never measure up to the beloved princess she had replaced. Every article celebrating Charlotte's Diana-like qualities served as an implicit criticism of Camilla herself. Insiders suggest that watching her step-granddaughter embody the very qualities that made Diana so beloved, while she herself remained merely tolerated by much of the public, was a source of significant frustration. The power dynamics within the royal family added another layer to Camilla's motivations. As queen consort at 77, married to a king who was 76 and had already faced health challenges, Camilla understood that her time at the pinnacle of royal life was inherently limited. When Charles eventually passes, her title and influence will diminish dramatically. She will become Queen Dowager, a ceremonial position with little actual power. William will be king, Catherine will be queen, and the era of Camilla's influence will effectively end. This awareness created what several palace insiders described as a race against time for Camilla to shape the monarchy's future before her influence waned. By inserting herself into Charlotte's upbringing and establishing precedents for traditional royal training, Camilla was attempting to cement a more conservative, traditional approach to royal life that would outlast her own time as queen. If Charlotte were molded according to Camilla's specifications, educated in traditional aristocratic institutions, and immersed in old-fashioned royal protocol, it would represent a victory for Camilla's vision of what the monarchy should be. The directive also revealed Camilla's concerns about the growing influence of the Middleton family within royal circles. Michael and Carol Middleton had become beloved figures to William and Catherine's children, providing a warm, stable, and normal family environment that contrasted sharply with the formal atmosphere of traditional royal life. The children spent holidays at the Middleton home in Bucklebury, enjoyed close relationships with Catherine's siblings, and clearly adored their maternal grandparents in ways they never had with their paternal ones. For Camilla, this represented a threat to the traditional royal order. The monarchy had historically maintained careful distance from the families of those who married into it, treating them as necessary connections but not truly part of the royal circle. The Middletons, however, had been thoroughly integrated into William and Catherine's family life, their middle-class values and unpretentious approach fundamentally influencing how the Wales children were being raised. Camilla viewed this as diluting the special nature of royalty, making Charlotte and her siblings too ordinary and insufficiently aware of their unique status. Senior palace officials who had observed Camilla's evolution from mistress to queen spoke of her complicated relationship with public perception and her determination to be taken seriously as a royal figure. Throughout the 2000s and 2010s, she had worked methodically to rehabilitate her image, taking on charitable causes, performing royal duties with increasing confidence, and slowly winning over skeptics through sheer persistence. Her elevation to queen consort in 2022, when Elizabeth passed and Charles ascended to the throne, represented the culmination of decades of effort. However, becoming queen had also increased Camilla's sense of entitlement to have her views respected and her preferences implemented. Several staff members noted a shift in her demeanor after the coronation in May of 2023, a greater willingness to express strong opinions and expect them to be followed. Where she had once been cautious about overstepping, conscious of her precarious position within the family, she now behaved with the confidence of someone who believed her role gave her authority over family matters. The directive regarding Charlotte also reflected Camilla's genuine, if misguided, beliefs about what preparing a princess for royal life should entail. Having spent years studying royal history and protocol to compensate for her own non-royal background, Camilla had developed strong convictions about the importance of traditional training. She believed that the relaxed, modern approach William and Catherine favored was setting Charlotte up for failure, leaving her unprepared for the intense scrutiny and rigid expectations she would face as an adult royal. In Camilla's worldview, shaped by her own difficult experiences with public criticism and media hostility, Charlotte wanted to develop a thick skin and an impeccable understanding of royal protocol as early as possible. The Swiss finishing school she had selected was known for transforming girls into polished, sophisticated young women, capable of moving effortlessly through elite social circles. The deportment classes, the etiquette training, the carefully controlled public appearances, all of these were designed to create a princess who could navigate royal life without making the mistakes Camilla felt might otherwise be inevitable. Palace insiders also revealed that Camilla had discussed her concerns about Charlotte with several of her own children and close friends, building a small support network for her views. Her son, Tom Parker Bowles, and daughter, Laura Lopes, had reportedly encouraged their mother's belief that she had a responsibility to ensure Charlotte received proper royal training, viewing it as protecting both Charlotte's future and the monarchy's reputation. This private reinforcement had strengthened Camilla's conviction that she was right to intervene, even in the face of obvious parental opposition. The role of King Charles in enabling Camilla's directive remained a subject of intense speculation among those aware of the situation. Some believed Charles genuinely shared his wife's concerns about Charlotte's education and supported a more traditional approach. Others suggested he had simply failed to recognize how inflammatory his wife's directive would be, not understanding that what seemed like helpful guidance to him would be received as presumptuous overreach by William and Catherine. Still others whispered that Charles was simply unwilling to contradict Camilla on matters she felt strongly about, having spent decades defending her and fighting for her acceptance. The institutional culture of the royal household also played a role in how the directive came to be issued. Certain longtime palace officials, shaped by decades of service under more traditional monarchs, quietly supported Camilla's views about royal training. They remembered a time when children of the royal family were indeed subjected to rigorous protocol education, when informality was discouraged, and when the monarchy maintained a much greater distance from ordinary life. To them, Camilla's directive represented a welcome return to proper standards after years of what they viewed as excessive modernization. However, younger staff members and those more attuned to contemporary attitudes about parenting and childhood development were appalled by the directive. They understood that modern research on child psychology emphasized the importance of stable family relationships, emotional security, and age-appropriate experiences. Removing a 9-year-old from her loving home environment to mold her into a traditional royal figure struck them as cruel and counterproductive, likely to create emotional damage rather than a confident, capable princess. As the truth about Camilla's motivations became clearer, what had initially seemed like a simple disagreement about education revealed itself as something far more complex. This was about competing visions for the monarchy's future, about unresolved tensions between tradition and modernization, and about the personal insecurities and ambitions of the individuals involved. Charlotte herself, a sweet 9-year-old girl who simply wanted to attend school with her friends and spend time with her family, had become the focal point for conflicts that had been building within the royal family for years. Charlotte's response and the family divide. Princess Charlotte, despite her parents' best efforts to shield her from the full scope of the conflict, sensed that something significant was troubling her family. Children possess an intuitive awareness of tension, and Charlotte had always been particularly perceptive. She noticed her mother's worried expressions when she thought no one was watching, observed her father's unusual terseness during phone calls, and felt the atmosphere shift whenever certain family gatherings were mentioned. When her parents finally sat down with her to discuss the situation in carefully chosen, age-appropriate terms, Charlotte's reaction was both heartbreaking and revealing. She asked her mother quietly whether she had done something wrong, whether she had failed in some way at being a princess. Catherine's immediate reassurance that Charlotte was perfect exactly as she was brought tears to both their eyes. Charlotte then expressed confusion about why anyone would want to send her away from her family when she was happy where she was. Her simple question cut to the heart of the matter, exposing the cruelty of Camilla's directive when viewed through a child's eyes. This wasn't about protocol or royal training. It was about taking a little girl away from everyone she loved. In the weeks following the confrontation, Charlotte became noticeably quieter during family events that included the king and queen. Where she had once greeted her step-grandmother with polite warmth, she now maintained a careful distance, her natural confidence dimmed by the knowledge that Camilla viewed her current life as insufficient. Staff members who had watched Charlotte grow from a toddler into a poised young girl were troubled by the change, recognizing that the directive had already caused damage even without being implemented. King Charles found himself in an impossible position, caught between loyalty to his wife and love for his son and granddaughter. Those close to the king described him as genuinely torn, understanding William's fury while also sympathetic to Camilla's concerns about royal standards. Charles had spent his entire life navigating the tension between duty and personal desires, and he struggled to find a path that would satisfy everyone involved. His attempts at mediation, suggesting compromises that might incorporate some traditional training while keeping Charlotte primarily with her family, satisfied no one, and only highlighted how unbridgeable the divide had become. The extended royal family quickly split into factions. Prince Edward and Sophie, the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, quietly sided with William and Catherine, having raised their own children with a similar emphasis on normalcy and emotional well-being. Princess Anne, ever the pragmatist, expressed private dismay at Camilla's overreach while carefully avoiding public involvement in the dispute. The Spencer family, Diana's relatives, were reportedly outraged when they learned of the directive, viewing it as an attack on the memory and values of the late princess, whose name Charlotte carried. Prince Harry, despite his estrangement from the family and residence in California, reportedly reached out to William when news of the conflict reached him through remaining palace contacts. The brothers, who had barely spoken in years following Harry's departure from royal duties and his public criticisms of the family, found unexpected common ground in their shared determination to protect their children from the institution's more damaging aspects. Harry's own experiences with rigid royal expectations and the trauma of losing his mother made him particularly sympathetic to William's position. The divide extended beyond family members to the palace staff themselves. Households that had traditionally cooperated smoothly found themselves working at cross purposes, with some officials loyal to the King and Queen's vision for the monarchy and others aligned with the Wales family's more modern approach. The resulting dysfunction affected everything from scheduling to public messaging, creating an atmosphere of dysfunction that threatened the smooth operation of royal duties. Queen Camilla, rather than backing down in the face of opposition, became more entrenched in her position. She felt her authority was being challenged, and her genuine concerns dismissed. Friends who spoke with her during this period described a woman who believed she was fighting for the monarchy's future against those who would weaken it through excessive informality. The more resistance she encountered, the more convinced she became that she was right, viewing the opposition as proof that her intervention was necessary. The conflict reached a crisis point in January of 2025, when Catherine made the unprecedented decision to take Charlotte and her brothers to stay with her parents in Bucklebury for an extended period. This move, which removed the children from the immediate royal orbit and placed them firmly in the Middleton sphere of influence, was widely interpreted as Catherine drawing a line in the sand. She was demonstrating that if forced to choose between the institution and her children's well-being, she would choose her children every single time. The future of the monarchy hangs in balance. The long-term implications of the conflict over Princess Charlotte extend far beyond a single disagreement about education. What began as Camilla's directive has exposed fundamental questions about the monarchy's future direction, the balance of power within the royal family, and whether the institution can successfully navigate the transition from traditional formality to modern accessibility without tearing itself apart in the process. Charlotte's situation has become a test case that will influence how future generations of royals are raised and what kind of monarchy Britain will have in the decades to come. For Charlotte herself, the impact of this conflict may shape her entire relationship with royal duty. At just 9 years old, she has learned that being a princess means being fought over, that adults will argue about her future without fully considering her own wishes, and that even her grandmother's love comes with conditions and expectations. These lessons, absorbed at such a formative age, could fundamentally alter her willingness to embrace royal life as an adult. The monarchy's hope has always been that Charlotte would become a dedicated, capable senior royal supporting her brother King George. But that outcome now seems far less certain. The conflict has also raised serious questions about William's future reign. His willingness to directly confront his father's wife and stand firm against palace pressure demonstrates the kind of king he intends to be, one who prioritizes family well-being over institutional demands. However, this same determination has created rifts that may persist long after he ascends to the throne. The officials and courtiers who sided with Camilla during this dispute are unlikely to forget William's fierce opposition to their views, potentially creating a hostile environment when he eventually becomes king. Public perception of the situation remains largely unknown, as the family has successfully kept the details private thus far. However, palace insiders predict that if the conflict becomes public, the response will overwhelmingly favor William and Catherine. The British public has watched Catherine evolve into a beloved princess, known for her dedication to children's welfare and mental health. The idea that someone would attempt to separate her from her daughter and criticize her parenting would likely provoke significant backlash against Camilla, potentially undoing years of image rehabilitation. The succession itself may be affected by how this conflict resolves. While the line of succession is legally established and cannot be easily altered, the practical functioning of the monarchy depends on cooperation and mutual respect among senior royals. If the rift between William's household and Charles's household becomes permanent, it will create enormous challenges for coordinating royal duties, presenting a united public face, and maintaining the dignity that the institution requires. Some royal historians suggest that this conflict represents a necessary reckoning for the monarchy. For generations, the institution operated on the assumption that personal desires and family relationships should be subordinated to duty and tradition. The younger generation of royals, led by William and Catherine, are challenging that assumption, insisting that their children's emotional well-being matters more than maintaining rigid protocols. Whether the monarchy can adapt to this new reality while maintaining public support remains an open question. The outcome of the Charlotte situation will likely establish precedents that affect all future royal children. If William and Catherine successfully resist Camilla's directive and raise Charlotte according to their own values, it will signal that parental authority trumps institutional pressure in the modern monarchy. If they are forced to compromise significantly, it will demonstrate that the institution still wields considerable power over even the most senior royals' personal lives. Either outcome will shape how Prince George, Prince Louis, and future royal children are raised. King Charles faces perhaps the most difficult position, knowing that his choices now will define his legacy and his relationship with his heir. At 76, having waited his entire life to be king, he must decide whether supporting his wife's traditional views is worth potentially alienating his son and grandchildren. The strain is reportedly taking a toll on his health and peace of mind, adding urgency to a situation that already feels like it is approaching a breaking point. For the British monarchy as an institution, the Charlotte conflict highlights the central challenge of modern royal life: how to maintain the special, elevated status that justifies the monarchy's existence while also being relatable, accessible, and human enough to retain public support. Charlotte embodies this tension perfectly, a princess who must be both extraordinary and normal, both carefully trained and naturally raised. How her family resolves this contradiction will determine not just her future, but the future of the crown itself. The question that haunts everyone involved is whether this rift can ever be fully healed or whether the damage is already done. Family conflicts, especially those involving children, create wounds that persist long after the immediate crisis passes. Charlotte will remember this time for the rest of her life, and how it shapes her view of duty, family, and her role in the monarchy remains to be seen. What started as Queen Camilla's directive about proper royal training has become something far more consequential, a defining moment that will reverberate through the Windsor family for generations, determining what kind of monarchy Britain will have and whether the institution can successfully navigate the challenges of the 21st century while keeping its human heart intact.